I'm going to record.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Unfiltered podcast. This is Ben. This week, Zach is traveling across the United States. He is a man on the move. So we have a special guest with us, Eli Hyde. Eli, do you want to introduce yourself to the folks?
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? So I'm Eli, just a good friend of Ben's. Excited to be here, excited to chat some sports here today.
Yeah, so today we're going to be doing basically an NFL midseason review, talking about some of the different players or teams that have surprised us or disappointed us, or just things that are sticking out to us at the midseason. Talk about some playoff predictions, awards predictions, maybe. Kind of just overall do some state of affairs of the NFL right now. So I guess kicking it off, Eli, do you want to talk about a particular one of the things that we talked about before, or where do you want to go with it to start?
So I think probably to start, we could just do a couple of pleasant surprises, like you said, probably
Yeah,
more so team-wise to start out.
let's
Um,
do it.
so for me, I jotted down two pleasant surprise teams for myself. I said the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Arizona Cardinals. Um, for those are
No joke. I have the exact two same teams down.
That's funny. I guess if you wanted to change it up a little bit too, a little less of a pleasant surprise, but kind of a team with questions going into the season is my favorite team, which is the Green Bay Packers. So,
Yeah.
preseason wise, the Green Bay Packers were projected 9.5 wins, so they're on pace to
Blow that
win
out.
about 13, 14 games right now. Realistically, probably 12 to 13 games, I'd say, is their margin of wins throughout the season that I
Hmm.
would say is expected. So they're also a pleasant surprise you could put in. But yeah, the main two that I thought of to not just be a homer fan would be the Steelers and Cardinals.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, I picked the Cardinals were a preseason dark horse team for me. Going into the year, I thought that I liked Kyler Murray a lot. Coming off an offensive rookie of the year season, I
Yeah.
figured he was poised to have a second year breakout. And then Cliff Kingsbury, who a lot of question marks around his head coaching style. Obviously a weird college career, being a losing coach, really, who then
Yeah.
is highly sought after in the NFL. Kind of an interesting story there. So I figured in his second season in the NFL, kind of poised for another breakout year. And that defense is actually it's kind of it's an interesting defense. They allow a lot of points, but they're kind of that bend don't break looking defense where they have playmakers on the defensive side of the ball with Patrick Peterson. Obviously, the injury to Chandler Jones is pretty significant, but
Yeah.
even still coming off that win against the Seahawks, that's a pretty significant win. So,
Yeah.
uh, but I'll pass it on to you. What do you?
For the Cardinals, the reason I'm pleasantly surprised is like kind of what you were touching on, the defense. I thought this was going to be a really bad defense, actually.
Yeah,
And I think outside of Peterson, the secondary was pretty weak. I guess Buda Baker's kind of proving himself to be much more of a or not star, but standout at least, like
yeah,
a notable person you have to plan for. The linebacking core was good, but up front, I didn't feel like. I mean, Jordan Phillips and I think Corey Peters are their like best two line guys. Who to me, I guess it depends if you call Chandler Jones a linebacker or an end, but
yeah. I'd probably move him more as an edge rusher too. Like
yeah,
he's best known for coming off the ball. He's coming off multiple, like, leading the league in sack seasons. So I
yeah,
don't really look at him as like your typical linebacker. He's that edge rusher that you
yeah,
want trying to hurry up the quarterback, similar to like TJ Watt. You know,
yeah.
he probably can cover a little bit, but when you think of Chandler Jones, you think he's coming off the end trying to get
Yeah.
after the quarterback.
And the offensive line I didn't think was going to be very good. And I think they've been mixed so far, but at least good enough to keep Murray upright an
Exactly. Yeah.
okay amount. So yeah,
Yeah.
they've definitely been surprised.
And Murray has that scramble ability to where, like, I mean, and obviously, a lot of this is coming off the Seattle game, which is a pretty significant win for them.
Mm,
But Murray wasn't sacked once in that Seattle game. Granted,
yeah.
that Seattle pass rush and that defense is just atrocious. But even still, it's pretty significant that you're not able to get him down at least once. an O-line that definitely, come playoff time, probably has a few question marks coming. But
Yeah.
they're definitely a team where, being in the division they're in and the spot that they're in right now, I'd say they're poised for quite the standout season.
Yeah. It'll speaking of that Seahawks defense, I read the other day Jamal Adams, the safety, has 2 sacks on the season and he's tied for the team lead in sacks with 2.
Yeah, and he hasn't played since what, like week 2? Like, I mean, what is going on there,
I don't know.
But they did, that Seahawks defense, they did just pick up Carlos Dunlap,
Oh, okay.
and aging Carlos Dunlap. So
I
we'll
always liked
see.
him.
Yeah, we'll see what he can really offer. But I mean, he's a guy who's definitely going to want to prove it. Like he's
Yeah.
coming from that Cincinnati defense. He was pretty vocal about not wanting to be there anymore. So Seahawks picking him up.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can offer something to a front seven that just doesn't get any sort of pressure whatsoever. And
Yeah.
maybe he can be the piece they need to really help that defense a little bit more. Probably not put
Yeah.
them over the top, but they're already pretty bad. But
Yeah,
you know,
true.
at least something.
What are you so now on the Steelers, what are your thoughts on them?
So the Steelers, I would say you could make a case that they're probably the most complete team in the NFL. They're a team that offensively and defensively they're towards the top of the league. They're coming off a pretty significant win to the Tennessee Titans. They were the 2 undefeated teams coming into the week,
Yeah.
outside the Seahawks, obviously, but they were both coming in, both AFC competitors, and just offensively, they can put up points. They have that rookie Chase Claypool. Their receiving
Yeah.
core just in general it's pretty lights out. Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, and then they have James Cameron to go in the back. And then they have probably a Hall of Fame QB and Ben Roethlisberger back, who's definitely a
Yeah.
big upgrade over Mason Rudolph and
Duck Hodges.
Josh Hodges, yeah, whatever his name is from last year. And then that defense is legit. I'd say they're
Yeah.
probably top 2 defense in the league. They don't allow any sort of run game whatsoever. They pretty much shut down your running back. And then
What
Josh
do you
Hayden.
think of the secondary? I feel like the secondary I didn't expect to be good at all.
Yeah, so I was a big fan of their move for Minka Fitzpatrick last year.
Oh yeah.
That was a move where it's like at the time you're kind of like, oh, they're not a great team right now. Like, why are they giving up high draft capital for a player who it just seems like is kind of not
Okay.
really, yeah, not really worth it. And I mean, he has definitely broken out with that defense. He's been, I mean, he's been a significant part of that secondary. Joe Hayden in that secondary is
Oh
definitely
yeah.
that veteran presence that you want, and they've just been lights out. Obviously, can't talk about how significant the Devin Bush injury is at that middle linebacker position, but it seems like they've had it shored up pretty well so far in the 2 weeks they've had without him. So I like the Steelers quite a bit. I like them coming out of the AFC North, even with Baltimore. And
Yeah.
I guess you could say Cleveland's somewhat of a competitor. They're on the right side of 500, so
Yeah.
you'd like to see that. But they're definitely a team where I was expecting probably a quiet playoff seeding, maybe a
Yeah.
6-7 spot for the wild card, but they're looking like probably the best team out of the AFC right now.
Yeah, they're really solid, and I think, you know, it says something that last week when they played the Titans and they won despite Big Ben, I think throwing 3 picks. So
Yeah,
despite him playing basically his worst game of the year, they still won against an
exactly.
undefeated team.
Yeah, and I mean, one of those picks was a halftime Hail Mary, so you can
Yeah.
write that one off. But yeah, I mean, him throwing that late pick, about 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter to give the Titans a chance to at least tie, that was a pretty bad choice on his part, thrown into double coverage. Safety was all over it. I mean, so even playing outside of Ben Roethlisberger not playing his best game, and the Titans kind of crawling their way back into it, I'd say, it's a defense that's proven that they can win. So
Yeah, agreed. Um, Top of my head too, just another random team that we don't really have to talk about too much, but surprising. I would say the Titans have been pleasantly surprising. Like I pictured another like 9-7 season, and it seems like they're going to be more like. I feel like they're going to be more like 11-5. Like I don't know if they're going to keep up this win rate and go like 14-2, but feel like 11-5 feels about right for them.
Yeah, no, and I mean, big question mark surrounding them was, they're paying big money to their running back, and then, is Ryan Tannehill really the guy? Like that
Yeah,
was kind of a question coming in. They paid him big dollars coming off of pretty much a 9 or 10 win season last year after they benched
yeah,
Mariota, and he has been all but worth that contract. Derrick Henry's been all but worth his contract so far. And even if they're just kind of going all in for 1 or 2 seasons with those two, because you know how the running back position can die
yeah,
off pretty quickly. I mean, I'd say go for it. This is their window. The defense definitely needs something. Them signing Jadeveon Clowney, people thought that was significant. He's been all but a non-factor.
yeah,
They gave all that money to Kevin Byard. I like Kevin Byard a lot in that secondary, but that defense needs some work if they really want to compete with the Chiefs, with the Steelers, with the Ravens. They have a lot of work cut out for them. But that offense is legit.
yeah,
I like their coach a lot. I like their OC a lot. I think he's going to get a lot of bids for head coaching jobs next year. He's right up there with Eric Bieniemy of the Chiefs, in my opinion, for head coaching positions. So,
do you think AJ, like, do you think out of that kind of receiving core of AJ Brown and Humphreys and who's the other guy, Davis, do you think the only thing that concerns me is, like, let's say the run game's getting stopped, and I know that they've got good tight ends, but I don't think I'm sold on any one of those three receivers being like a number one on a team. What do you think of them?
I like AJ Brown a lot. I think AJ Brown can be a true number one on a team. I think if you were to put him on just about any team in the NFL, I think he would ball out.
Yeah.
Chris Davis has not lived up to his top 10 draft pick.
Yeah.
He's been a pretty big disappointment. He's had trade rumors surrounding him the last 2-3 years. I think with them winning now, I think they're gonna keep him just so that the core stays together. I like AJ Brown a lot. I thought AJ Brown was a true offensive rookie of the year candidate last year. I
Yeah.
thought if a receiver is ever going to get it, it's going to be AJ Brown. And him and DK Metcalf coming out of Ole Miss. I'm amazed Ole Miss didn't win more games than supposed to. Like looking back on it, it's like what happened there? Because I think they're both proven to be the future of the wide receiver position in the NFL. So I like AJ Brown a lot.
I think my hesitation with him was I feel like he's a physical beast, but just a little bit rough around the edges is all.
Yeah.
But,
and he's one of those players where you look for, he gets the one big play a game. Like last week he had like a 70-yard touchdown catch, but he's got that breakout speed. He's physical. I think he's a great true number one, and I think he's going to make big money on that team in the future, as long as he stays healthy. He missed a couple weeks this year, but I think he really is kind of a breakout star at that wide receiver position.
Yeah. So on the flip side of the surprising team coin is the disappointing teams. Do you want to talk about some of the teams that you think are most disappointing this year?
Yeah. So we'll see if you have the same two that I have. I have some alternates for this one as well.
Okay.
The two big ones I'm picking are Dallas and Minnesota.
Okay.
I think Dallas coming into the year, people were expecting 13-3 wins. They're expecting towards the top of the NFC with that Mike McCarthy hire. They thought that Jason Garrett was really holding them back, and they are atrocious. I mean, the NFC East in general is just awful, but Dallas being towards the bottom of that NFC East is bad. So, it's looking like Mike McCarthy just might
be a one-season coach.
Yeah, it's looking like he might not be the guy that people have thought. They came in and he's talking all about all the analytical stuff he did in his year off and his, living in his cabin or whatever he did to study the analytics with this group of coaches, and that is just not paying off for him. I mean, they're coming off a pretty significant loss to the Washington Redskins, and obviously Andy Dalton going out in the middle of that game doesn't help, but he wasn't doing anything beforehand either. So
you're telling me you don't believe in Ben DiNucci
or
whatever his name is?
I do not believe in Ben DiNucci, no. And
I think he fumbled on one of his first possessions he had the ball.
Dude, I can't watch it. Like the NFC East in general is pretty much unwatchable. And I was just gonna say the fact that they didn't flex the Baltimore Steelers game to Sunday night over the Eagles Cowboys game is just atrocious. It is just
Yeah.
such a travesty of the NFL to make people sit through a Sunday night football game of the two 4-1 Eagles and the
2-5.
2-5 Cowboys, as opposed to the undefeated Steelers and the Ravens. I think that is just a true travesty of the NFL to not look at that game and be like, yeah, who gives a crap about the NFC?
I think I don't know if a team's ever won a division with 6 wins, but I think the Eagles might become a 6-9-1 division champ this year. I just got the
Yep.
feeling.
I've been saying that all year, and I think there's potential that after this year they maybe look at revamping the format to at least moving, a team, because there's no reason an NFC East team should be hosting a playoff game. There's
Yeah.
zero reason that any team, any wild card team should have to travel. And in my opinion, the NFC East just should be devoid of a playoff spot in general this year.
Yeah.
It is just, it's unwatchable. I mean, every team in that division is in the race right now, and you're looking at the Giants, who are unwatchable, the Redskins, who are all but unwatchable. Like, you're looking at them as true competitors in that division, and you're just
Yeah,
like,
it's sad.
what is going on here? Like, but I'm gonna pass it off to you. What's one of your disappointing
I
teams?
also had the Vikings, and then I also had a Texas team, but I said the Texans rather than the Cowboys.
Yeah, the Texans were a flex team for me. So
I I thought the Texans were just, I don't know. I just thought that they were gonna win the division, be 11-5, and basically put up the same exact season. And I know that they lost Hopkins, but I feel like they still had a decent receiving core of like Fuller, Stills, Cobb. There's somebody I'm forgetting out of. There's like they have
Brandon
four.
Cooks.
Yeah,
Brandon,
Cooks.
yep.
I don't know. I thought that was still a pretty good receiving core. I guess Darren Fells is a bad starting tight end, but and the running backs are so also. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought the defense would be better too.
Yeah, they've definitely, like I said, they were another one of my disappointing teams. The other one I put is the New England Patriots, but we don't really have to dive too much into them. But yeah, no, Houston was another big one for me too. Definitely a team where I was expecting 11 wins, competing for that division. But looking back on it now, what I think their biggest issue is that they invested too much into one style of receiver. Cooks and
Yeah,
Cobb are both slot guys. Will Fuller realistically is more of a slot guy, probably not a true number one, your X receiver you want on the edge. He's just
yeah,
that vertical threat that's going to take the top off. And then I think what their offense was built around is kind of dinking and dunking underneath to DeAndre Hopkins, who could make
yeah,
a play out of anything and has the most sure hands in the NFL. And then I think they put a lot of stake into David Johnson being that back he was 3 years ago, and he's
yeah,
just not that guy anymore. He's
yeah,
just he's not the quality running back you want. And I think they invested a lot of these resources into guys, and that O line, they gave Laramie Tunsil 22 million because he had all the leverage at that left tackle position. And
yeah,
he's been fine, I suppose, but everything else on that line has just been bad.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I still believe Deshaun Watson can be like a great player. They gave him all that money in the offseason. I think he is still one of the top QBs in the league. He makes stuff happen.
I
But
100% believe in him. I think he is like I think he's 85 to 90% of what Lamar is, but he can throw it way stronger,
yep,
you know?
I agree. I agree with that entirely. He doesn't have that breakaway speed like Lamar has, but like he plays the QB position better than Lamar plays the QB position.
Agreed.
And their defense is bad. Like, that's another thing. Their defense just
Yeah.
isn't good. Like, they can't get pressure like they were. Their middle linebacker position is all but non-existent. Their run game is or their run defense is all but non-existent. And I
They
mean,
shouldn't have traded Clowney, I don't ever think. I never
yeah,
really got that. Like JJ Watt's injury prone and already on the wrong side of 30. Why were you trading like in his prime Clowney? I just
yeah,
never got that.
I can kind of get it. I think for some reason Jadeveon Clowney has this like sphere around him that like he was the number one pick, that he's just this world beater, that he's this game wrecker, and it's just like
Yeah.
it seems like he's like one game he's that guy you want. He's that game wrecker. He's that guy that can do everything for you. but he's never had high sack totals. He's never been
That's true.
he's never been in double digit sacks. He's never,
I think
it seems
9
like
is his career high.
I was gonna say, yeah, it seems like he just kind of takes games off sometimes. And I think Tennessee's running into that issue right now where it's like
Yeah.
still on the season. We're coming up at the halfway point. He has 0 sacks on the season. Maybe he's just out of shape from not doing anything all off season, but like I mean, you're paying him 15 mil to get sacks and he's not
Yeah.
giving you any, and they're
Yeah.
winning beside that, but like it just, he went to Seattle last year. Seattle still had a bad pass rush last year with him, like
Yeah.
it's just he just for some reason he never lived up to that number one pick hype. Whereas you look at Myles Garrett, similar style of player, and he is defensive player of the
He
year
is the
material right
dude.
now. He's living up to the contract he's getting, and there's a reason the Browns wanted him long term. I think the Texans were right to get rid of Clowney when they did. The issue is that Bill O'Brien ruined that team. He invested all their
Yeah.
resources into all the wrong things. He put them into cap hell, and it's just they're going to be rebuilding for years to come, I think. And if Deshaun Watson's as
Yeah.
transcendental as people think he is, he'll get them out of that. But I think you can only work with what you got to a point.
They don't have their first round pick in the upcoming draft or the draft after that. So it's really, there's no incentive to be bad this year either. Like they're not going to just phone it in now that they're 1-6. They're going to try and keep winning, which I mean, what best case scenario? They finish maybe like 6-10. I
Right.
don't know.
Well, and they play in a pretty competitive division now with Indianapolis kind of shoring itself up.
Yeah.
Frank Reich's looking like a guy there. Obviously Tennessee, and then you're playing with the lowly Jags, so that's good for 2 wins out of the season at least. But
Yeah.
yeah, Houston is a mess right now. The one quality thing they have is that they have the quarterback position figured out. That's
Yeah.
the toughest position to find in football. So as long as you have that figured out, you're good. However, everything else needs some retooling, and like I
Yeah.
said, they're in a cap issue right now. I'm surprised they're not just dumping all the resources they can this year. Granted they don't have draft picks, but they need to get rid of some of those contracts that are just going to be eating up their team.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
So,
Oh well.
yeah.
We both had the Vikings. I'll say, oh man, I don't know. I think the Vikings. It's always a cop out answer, but they do have a tough schedule this year. Like I look at their schedule and I say, should they have won any of the games they've lost at 1-5? They lost to the Packers. They lost to the Titans. They lost to. I'm trying to think of who else. They haven't played the Lions or the Bears yet, but I feel like it's not like they're losing games that they're necessarily supposed to be winning, except, they played Seattle. This last game, I don't remember who they played, but the Atlanta, they should have won that. I don't know. It's just Kirk Cousins is never going to be the dude, and it's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and the frustrating thing is they thought he was. They just signed him to a 2-year extension. They gave him, and the
Oh my
problem
God.
is too is his money is all but guaranteed. So
Yeah.
there's no reason to dump him, unless the
Yeah.
team wants to trade for him for some reason, which he's not given any team a reason to want to trade for him. He's
Yeah.
stuck there. And so yeah, you look at their losses, like, yeah, I mean, losing to the Packers, it's a divisional game, it's week 1. You could think it's fluky, maybe, like, okay, the Packers are just looking good this year. Then they lose to the Colts on the road. That's a fair loss. The Colts have looked good.
Although they looked awful in that game. I believe it was like they were down something like 18-0 for most of the game, and then they
Yeah.
put lipstick on the pig and scored 11 points like late in the fourth.
Yep, and that's it. Yeah, final score of that game was 28-11. They just, again, didn't look great. The Bears didn't look great against the Colts either, though.
Yeah.
Then they blow that big lead at home to the Titans. Then they
Yeah.
beat the Texans in what ultimately became Bill O'Brien's last game as the Texans pretty much owner.
Yeah.
They lose on a last second play to the Viking or the Seahawks, and then they
Yep.
lose at home to the Falcons, which that's about as bad a loss as you can get. You can't. You
Yeah.
just and Kirk Cousins, he throws three. Is it three
3
first half
picks.
picks?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, it's one of those things where Mike Zimmer just got extended. They're not going to fire him.
Yeah,
Kirk
this
Cousins just got extended, so you can't get rid of him. But they're all but dumping and punting on the season
yeah.
because they went into the season. They traded for Ngakwe from the Jaguars before the season started.
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, Daniil Hunter being out has been significant for their defense, but they put the trust into two rookie corners, Harrison Smith on the back end, still a quality player, and then you have Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks in the middle. Like that's a good defense still,
yeah,
but it hasn't worked out. Obviously, they gave Ngakwe away to the Ravens.
yeah,
They just really they traded a second round for a third round pick, pretty much.
yeah, that's bad.
And you know they're gonna more than likely they'll probably dump Kyle Rudolph if they can. They're probably gonna
Yeah.
try and dump. I wouldn't be surprised if they try and get rid of Harrison Smith. You know,
I think they'd probably go for Harris before Smith just because Harris is on the 1 year deal.
yeah.
And Smith they think he's like the homegrown boy, but we'll see. We'll
And
see.
I mean, probably not very much to validate it, but I've heard talk of Adam Thielen potentially being
Yeah.
looked at
Oh
too.
God.
Because I think they do have a true number one in Justin Jefferson. He seems like he's the
Yeah.
real deal. And they did just give Adam Thielen quite a bit of money. So I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
it's a team that came in that thought they would compete for the division and potentially for an NFC championship. And now they're competing for a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
So,
I will say that between Hunter and Pierce both being out on defense, Michael Pierce he was like the belle of the ball signing free agency, and they gave him a ton of money, and he just said, I'm not going to play because of the virus. So
yeah.
that
He was
really
that
bites into him.
he was that D tackle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He was from the
Yep.
Ravens and they
Yep, that's
signed
what I
him.
thought. Yep, he was a big name, and when he opted out, I remember thinking, "Oh, that's significant. That's really
Yeah.
good." Because obviously, me being a Packer fan, I keep my eye on the division, and yeah,
Yeah.
he was a name where I was like, "Oof, dodged a bullet there." So
Yeah. So I think when you look at arguably their top two defensive players between him and Hunter not playing, I guess you can argue Harrison Smith is better than either of those two, but
mhm.
definitely the pass rush is god awful versus Seattle on that last drive where Seattle, scored and won. Um, it just Zimmer kept sending a rush and they never were getting to Wilson, and they left the D backs in man to man and they were just continually getting roasted. And it's like Zimmer doesn't realize that the rush is terrible this year between those dudes being out, and like I guess Anthony Barr is the best rusher at this point, but yeah,
It's just not the same defense, and
yeah,
I remember thinking when they gave Kirk Cousins all that money, when they gave him that fully guaranteed deal, I said this is their 3-year window. They're
yep,
coming off an NFC championship game. They think they're upgrading from Case Keenum to Kirk Cousins. This is their window. They have the defense still together. It's a quality defense. And that window just closed. I mean, really,
yeah,
that's how I see it. They had to get rid of most of their defense. They got rid of their secondary. Obviously, Anthony Harris on that franchise tag is
yeah,
not what you want to see, but yeah, really, I think their window closed, and now
yeah.
they're really looking in the draft. I think they look for a top 5 pick. I think they go QB. I think they let them
I hope
develop under
so.
Kirk, and hopefully they can progress from there. But definitely a team where coming in had a lot of high hopes, and now they're just
Yeah.
punting. You
It
know,
would have been interesting to see what this team would have been like if they would have never gone for Cousins and just would have signed um, Keenum to like a 1 year, 10 mil deal, or if they would have drafted a QB with a first round pick rather than another defensive back. It would have been interesting. And I feel like in the long run, they would have been better off because basically you paid Kirk Cousins. Now it'll be the equivalent of the 90 mil of the first deal plus an additional
I think it's
60 mil.
yeah.
So 150 million basically for what I think will amount to one playoff win last year versus the Saints.
Yep. Which I mean, tip of the hat to that playoff win. I didn't want to play the Saints at home last year, so
Yeah.
I appreciated that. But yeah, I mean, really, and you know what? Maybe that falls on Mike Zimmer a little too. They think, they thought they had the winning formula there, and I really thought that was a team. That was a team that I definitely was circling on our schedule throughout the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I was worried about them when they got Ngakwe. I was like, oh, like this is a team
Yeah.
that's looking good, and just Kirk Cousins has regressed a ludicrous amount throughout
Yeah.
this year. So
And the offensive coordinator turnover has been pretty atrocious too. Like 2016, Norv Turner; 2017, Shermer; 18, John DeFilippo; 19, Stefanski; and now 20, Gary Kubiak. So 5 OCs in 5 years.
Yep, just not a lot of consistency there, and
No.
that can be really tough on an offense too, especially when they're trying to find their identity. And
Yeah.
I think the Vikings do have a stud in Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is a clear
Yeah.
when he's healthy, a top 5 running back. The issue is that health factor. I mean, he cannot finish a season. He's already missed 1 or 2 games this season with a groin injury.
Yep.
He he's looking questionable for Sunday, so he's looking at a potential 3rd game. And
Yeah.
it's a player with all the potential in the world that they just paid a lot of money to as well, that just can't seem to stay healthy.
Okay, this sounds ridiculous, but tell me what you would do if this trade was offered to you. Kirk Cousins and 3 first round picks for let's see here. Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson?
For 3 firsts and Cousins.
I mean, if you're the Seahawks, you almost have to do that. I think mid-season this year, that would really suck for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it wouldn't work in this year, but if they would have done that preseason, I've always last year I wanted them to do Cousins and 2 firsts for him, and then now that Cousins is really regressed, I don't know. I just feel like that's what the Vikings have always been missing, is a reliable quarterback, and it'd be the same money,
Yeah, exactly. And I think Russell Wilson is a clear upgrade. I'm sure, realistically, I'm sure that they could probably get away with still just Kirk and 2 firsts. I don't know.
Yeah.
3 firsts for a QB is, I mean, I don't even know if Pat Mahomes would call for that. But
yeah.
If you're the Seahawks, I mean, you're looking at major draft capital from that. The only issue is that the Seahawks never draft in the first round. So,
yeah.
But if you're looking at this year, they're looking at a top 5 pick. Obviously, Russell is probably going to change the season around a little bit, but
yeah.
There's only so much Russell Wilson. I suppose it's probably a similar situation to what he's doing in Seattle, though that defense is awful in Seattle. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Seahawks, I'm doing that. But
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's basically, you're putting a lot of stake in Russell Wilson at 31 or 32 years old if you're the Vikings.
That's true.
So,
what's the worst part is that Cousins is so bad. As a Vikings fan, I would do it in a heartbeat. Honestly, I don't even care. I just want him out of there.
I don't blame you. I was when they extended him this offseason, I was very shocked. And
I was too. I don't
to be honest, to me, it's the same feeling as if the Bears were looking at 1 year of Mitchell Trubisky and they're like, yeah, we want him still. I would have been like, go for it. This works out in my favor so much more.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How about, let's see here. Let's do overrated and underrated teams.
Okay. So, for overrated teams, I have here, I'll have you go first, actually.
My main one for overrated, I think, is the Seahawks. 5-1, I think, looks a lot better than what this team actually is. I think, they blew out Atlanta, which basically everybody but the Vikings has done this year. And their other wins have all been pretty shaky. I think they won by 1 score against Miami, which, Miami's record looks okay this year, but they're not a very good team still. So that's pretty awful. They barely won against a 1-5 Vikings team. They, lost to the Cardinals, who I think should have been a win for them. They blew that one because Wilson didn't play perfect. I don't know. I'm just not. I think that they'll make the playoffs, but I think that they could easily be a first round out. And basically, they have to have Wilson, have a QBR of 120 or better in order to win any game, it feels like.
Yeah, that's kind of where I feel like they're at. Their defense is abysmal. They're towards the bottom of the league. Can't get any pass rush. Their secondary is shaky. The shining moment on their defense is Bobby Wagner. And even he is not enough to really shore up that defense. So there's a lot of problems there. Pretty much you are looking for that offense playing perfect. I'm really excited that Pete Carroll's finally letting Russ play his style of football. I'm excited that
Yeah.
Russ can actually, do his thing and show like what he's capable of. And I'd say Russ is a top 2 MVP candidate right now. I think him and Rodgers are both at the top right now. And then
Yeah.
Tom Brady's coming up the rear. But um, I like Russell Wilson a lot. I like what he does. But yeah, I mean, you look against that Cardinals defense, three turnovers against that Cardinals defense with pretty much all three of those being his fault. I mean, he
Yeah.
lobs that one and Buda Baker's it's an easy break for Buda Baker.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf saved that drive because the Cardinals didn't end up scoring anything on that drive. But then he throws that bad pass to that Patrick Peterson gets his feet in on, and then he I don't know what was going on in that overtime pick.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
mean, you're at midfield. I know it's like 3rd and long, but like I don't know what he was doing. And that's to Isaiah Simmons, their first round rookie who played 5 snaps that game. Like he has been a non-factor for the Arizona defense so far, and he's just
Yeah.
out there like, what is going on? Like I'll take that. So yeah, I mean, it shows that like if Russell Wilson doesn't play pretty much a perfect game, the team isn't going to succeed. And I think you get to playoff time, granted they're going to have home games. I don't know if that'll be a factor in the playoffs this year. It depends on fans in the stadium, but I don't see them getting past the NFC Championship game. There's too many
Oh no.
goals. Tampa Bay has a better team. I think Green Bay has a better team. Um,
I'll be shocked. I'll be surprised if Seattle wins a playoff game. Like
yeah,
during I I can't name like a good signature win they've even had this year really. Like have they I mean, okay, they're playing San Francisco this week. I guess if they beat them, they can sort of hang their hat on that, but um
a lot of question marks surrounding San Francisco this year too, though. I mean,
yeah.
all the injuries on that team have definitely reshaped the way that team looks. San Francisco is just not the same team they were last year, and I mean that was to
Yeah.
be expected. I mean, I wasn't expecting San Francisco to be another Super Bowl like in the Super
Yeah.
Bowl again this year. I thought they were riding off a high on that. Um, I was
Have they
actually
have they faced the Ram? Has Seattle faced the Rams yet? I'm trying to
No,
think.
I think
Oh,
I
okay.
think that Arizona game was their first divisional game this year.
Hmm.
And I mean, it goes to show, like that's a very competitive division. I think that divisional, we can discuss seedings and whatnot later. I think that I have that division having 3 teams come out of it for the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
And I think there's potential that, yeah, the Seahawks just run into a team it's just better than them when it comes
Yeah.
to the playoffs. Their hope is that the playoffs run through Seattle and that they can have fans there and stuff, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. I really think
Yeah, I don't think
they're
so.
vying for a division win, but I think they're come the playoff time. I just don't think they're going to really shore up.
How about who's your team as far as
So
being
my overrated
overrated?
team Overrated team as of right now, I actually put down 2. I put the Buffalo Bills and I put the Cleveland Browns. For Buffalo, I think, they came off maybe an easier start to the schedule than,
Hmm.
they obviously plays that Tuesday night game against the Titans on a
Yeah.
weird COVID week, and
Yeah.
that game's just not close.
Yeah.
And then they played I think they just played the Chiefs, I want to
Hmm.
say, and again, not close. Josh
Yeah.
Allen was looking like he was a true MVP candidate at the beginning of the year. At
Yeah.
this point, that's kind of fallen off. They should have a good bounce back week against New England. New England looks like they're somewhat punting on
Giving up.
yeah, they're somewhat punting on the season as well. So it's their division to lose, really. It's between them and the Dolphins, it feels like, which is a weird turn of events. Um,
Yeah.
but we'll see how Tua time goes down in Miami. But yeah, I mean, the Bills, I like Sean McDermott a lot. I think the last couple of weeks they've kind of come back to reality. Again, still their division to lose. And then when they make the playoffs, anything can happen in the playoffs. But I think they're not quite at that over the hump mark where they need to really compete in the AFC, just because the AFC at this point is so competitive, with
Yeah.
with the Chiefs, with the Ravens, with the Steelers, even the Titans.
Yeah.
I think they're just a little bit behind all of those teams. And then the Browns are, they're just the Browns. They're always one of the best looking teams on paper, it feels like, in recent years. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, just Baker Mayfield just isn't the guy. I really liked the job Kevin Stefanski's done. I thought they were going to be another dumpster fire this year, and he has definitely shown up. The OBJ injury, we'll see what happens with that. Some people are arguing that might be good for the team, as
I don't think so.
bad as that sounds, but I don't really think so either. But maybe they think that Baker can stop force feeding him, I guess. But I think their biggest issue so far has been the lack of Nick Chubb. Losing Nick Chubb was a pretty big loss for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of changed the way that team plays. They can't play divisional teams. Like, they can't play the
Yeah.
Steelers, they can't play the Baltimore Ravens. They just can't compete with those teams and those caliber teams. So that makes me believe they play the Chiefs, they play the Titans, probably the same outcome. So I think they're a team that, for their record right now, is a bit overrated.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think I just feel like, have they played either the Steelers or the Ravens yet?
They've played both.
Oh, okay.
They played the Ravens week 1 and they scored 6 points, and then they played the Steelers last week and I think they scored 6 or 7 points, maybe 8. I don't know. I can look really quick.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was I think it was 7 I can't remember. It was 6 or 7.
Yep, they scored 7 last week. So against their division, they have put up 13 points, and against pretty much everyone else, they've been averaging above 25. So
Yeah.
they can't compete in their division. They had a close game against Cincinnati last week that came down to a touchdown with 11 seconds left. I mean, it's just a team that I think their wins don't really reflect the team that they are.
I agree. I feel like they're one of those teams that they're going to beat up on bad teams. Like, they'll win against any bad team, but they'll lose against any good team. So that usually makes you out to be like about a 9-7 team, which kind of feels like what they are. They feel like they're 9-7.
And I think a lot of that boils down to their coaching. I do, like I said, Kevin Stefanski has been a big surprise to me. You look in recent history at coaches coming out of that Vikings offensive coordinator position, and it just hasn't been super positive. Norv Turner and Pat Shurmur, neither one's been amazing coming out of that. And Kevin Stefanski is looking like the guy that they've been wanting in Cleveland. I think they need to reevaluate their quarterback position. I think realistically they probably do dump OBJ, who looks like he's kind of flared out of the league. It seems like a little bit. He's just not the guy he was in New York in his first couple of years, and really build that team around the run game. Nick Chubb looks like a stud. They just re-signed or they just extended what's his name, Kareem Hunt to a 2-year deal. That's a great backfield.
I really love that backfield.
And their offensive line is significantly improved. Their offensive line has looked like a top tier O line. Defense needs pieces, but building around Myles Garrett, there's not a lot to complain about there. So they're a team that I think in a couple of years they could be potential competitors, but they have to reevaluate some positions to really get over the top, I think, especially with how good the AFC is looking now. It's just really, the AFC is very competitive right now. There's 3 or 4 teams at the top that are really a few tiers ahead of those that are at the 5 through 7 spot in the AFC.
Yeah, I agree. And it just quick touch on the Bills. They feel like a 10-6 team, and I feel they're that division feels a little bit like the NFC East, actually, to me too, in that like they're probably just going to get 6 wins automatically just from being in the division they're in, but besides that, they're not like that great. Like, if you take those 6 wins, I feel like they'll be like 10-6. Outside of that, that's like going 4-6, so like an okay team. I don't know.
That's been the Patriots formula the last 20 years, and it's been an easy divisional ride through. They get a home playoff game at least, and all they have to do is tack on another 4, 5, 6
Yeah.
wins, and they're looking at a first round bye, which is that's been the Patriots way for the last 20 years, So
Yeah.
the division hasn't changed all that much. The Patriots just got worse.
Yep.
So
Yeah, if you if the Patriots, when they would get those like sweeps of the division, they'd only have to go like 5-5 besides that, and that's how they've been an 11 plus win team for like the last 18 years or
yeah.
20 years.
I mean, yeah, I think they're on like a 10-year window of winning the division every year. I mean,
Yeah.
they went to something like 8 straight AFC championship games, which it's significant, but if you look at it, all you have to do is win one game against a wild card team pretty much, and
Yeah.
you're there, So not to take anything away from the Pats, but their division has been one of the worst in football for the last 20 years, and
Yeah.
outside of
Probably the worst.
a few good Jets years, it's been all the Patriots. So
Yeah.
oof.
Do we want to talk about players now, or do you have any other subjects you want to inject, or otherwise I think we can just go on to some of the disappointing or surprising players.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Let's do let's do underrated and overrated players.
Okay. So I did one of each. My overrated player, I have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Mm-hmm.
So QB for the 49ers. Uh, hasn't lived up to that contract coming off of 4 games pretty much. He's a guy who knows how to win. He can manage a game, but I don't see Jimmy Garoppolo being a guy who's going to win them a Super Bowl. They have the defense to do it. They have the offensive weapons to do it, but Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is going to be the Achilles heel for that team. Obviously, they have one of the best head coaches in football, one of the best minds in football right now, and he's just a guy who I just don't think will get them over the top. He proved it last year. He was a thorn in their side last year in the Super Bowl when the Chiefs came back. And then for underrated players, I'm going to be a homer on this one, but cornerback Jair Alexander.
He's
I think,
solid.
yeah, he's playing at an all-pro level right now that doesn't get discussed amongst the top of the league. PFF grades him highly. They're really the only source I've seen that talks about how great he is. He has played some of the elite NFL talent this year, and he has not allowed much. Calvin Ridley's one bad game. He played Jair Alexander.
Yeah.
Mike Evans, even with he had an ankle injury, but even still, Jair allowed one catch for about 20-something yards to Chris Godwin in that game. Last week against Will Fuller did not have a catch on him. Will Fuller's one touchdown came the end of the game on Josh Jackson or some other corner. Adam Thielen had a good week 1 game, but again, that's week 1.
A lot of that's garbage time stuff too.
Exactly. The defense looked completely different in that garbage time, but Jair Alexander, I think through the halfway point of the season, he should be looked at as an all-pro, first team all-pro, and the picks don't show up, but if you're a cornerback who's locking down, you're not going to get picks because they're not going to throw the ball your way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think he has potential to be a first team all-pro this year if name recognition works for him. And then I think he really honestly should be in the defensive player of the year candidacy alongside Myles Garrett. And if Stephon Gilmore can do it, I think Jair Alexander should be there.
Yeah. So for underrated, I have a few dudes that I actually really like, and I just feel like I never hear anybody talking about them. They're actually both Jaguars players, DJ Chark and James Robinson. I guess I've heard some about James Robinson from mainstream media, but I feel like nobody talks about Chark. And this dude, if he was on any other team, would be, I think, like pretty much a number 1. And I mean, he's a number 1 on the Jaguars, but that doesn't do much for you with Minshew as your QB. But like, let's say throw him on like the pack opposite Devontae Adams, and he's getting like 800, 900 yards a season and probably like 7 or 8 touchdowns.
Absolutely. DJ Chark, just that Jaguars team in general isn't really discussed very highly. I mean, you look at even I think the Myles Jack in the middle of that defense he's a very underrated player. That that Jags team has pieces to build around. Obviously, they need to reevaluate their quarterback position. But I like DJ Chark quite a bit. And yeah, the running back Robinson, he just gets a lot of fantasy hype. That's the only reason I really know much about him.
Yeah.
But he's definitely been the guy down there this year. And that team's been a bit of a surprise, not necessarily in the wins, but they've been competitive in a lot of
Yeah.
the games, which I think a lot of people are just kind of expecting them. They're in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. They're looking for that QB, which they still should be, but
Yeah.
they haven't just completely given up and let teams walk all over them. They've been a competitive team throughout the year.
Another dude I hear a little bit about him in the rookie of the year talk, but in the grand scheme of things, I feel like I don't hear people talk much about him, but I like him and I think he's going to be solid for the next 4 or 5 years is Antonio Gibson on I guess I can't say Redskins anymore, even though I still
The
call them that
football
in my
team.
head. The football team.
Yeah.
Um, I think he seems really solid, but also I keep wondering if that's a factor of them just giving him tons of touches because they don't have anything at QB. But he's been good this year.
Yeah. No, and I just saw something where it's, on like he breaks like 23% of tackles or something like that. Like
Wow.
it's some ridiculous stat like that, where you're wondering like why do they even keep track of that? But um he's a hard runner, he's an athletic guy. I know he had a lot of hype, especially in the fantasy area coming out of this season. I wasn't too sure about him. I didn't know much about him, but he's
hmm
definitely lived up to the hype. He's been a pretty important factor with football team that football team squad. So
Yeah.
it just
Uh,
sounds good.
yeah, it does. Do you want to talk about? I guess we touched on our underrated. Do we really touch on our overrated at all?
So I just discussed Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh yeah, Garoppolo.
Yeah,
Yeah, he just seems like a very average, middle of the road quarterback. But last year had a great supporting cast, so by proxy, he looked good.
yeah. I mean, he threw the ball like 8 times in the NFC Championship game. So you know, I
Yeah,
and they won that game by 18 points. So
yeah,
I think he's got it pretty easy sometimes. But
yeah,
is if he can just be a game manager, which sometimes he can, sometimes he can't. Maybe he could. I don't think he's a guy who's going to eventually get them over the top like they want. I don't really see them making the playoffs this year. I think the injuries are going to be too much. There's potential they do. I mean, they're still competitive in that division, but I just think he too much going on there to really help them. So
yeah. For an overrated player, I kind of this is overrated slash disappointing for me. Um, Overrated one I'd say is Zeke this year. Like we touched on the Cowboys being terrible earlier, but when Prescott went down, I was like, hey, they still have Andy Dalton, like a lower tier but still kind of starting caliber QB, and they still have Zeke, who people keep calling like a top 3 back over and over, but he's just been all thumbs this year, and he has so many fumbles.
yeah,
I think he's had a fumble in like all but 1 or 2 of his games so far.
yeah, he can't seem to hold on to the ball. I mean, he had like 2 or 3 a week or two ago. I mean, he
Yeah.
had a ludicrous amount the other week. And I
They
agree.
still have a good O line too.
Yeah, I mean, and their O line is injured. They're
Yeah.
using backup tackles and stuff like that. So I'm not going to completely say that the O line is still like elite or anything. They're
Yeah,
pretty.
it's not elite, but I mean they still got like Zach Martin, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he might be hurt. I'm not sure.
Oh,
They
okay.
they got so much going on there, but even still, I mean, if you're this amazing running back, you're going to be able to work through some of that. So, is he an amazing running back because he's the product of an elite O line for the last 4 years, or is
Yeah,
he
that's true.
or is he really that guy? And I think so far this season he's showing that
He might not be
he,
that
he
guy.
might not be that guy. And it's interesting too. Like a lot of people, whenever a quarterback goes down, they want to look for trading for a quarterback. I've heard a lot of
Yeah.
trade discussion around the Dallas Cowboys wanting to trade for Ryan Fitzpatrick, or trade for Blake Bortles off the practice squad of the
Yeah.
Broncos, something like that. And it's like, with why do you sign Andy Dalton if not to be that guy?
Yeah.
I've never understood why people are like, well, we need to get a better quarterback in here if we want to compete. It's like, well, why do you have a backup quarterback then? Like just for the one game that he goes in? Like they just gave Andy Dalton like I want to say it's like 8 mil a year or something like that. And I mean,
Yeah.
obviously he's hurt now, so it's Ben DiNucci time. But like, why sign Andy Dalton, who's been a starter
Yeah.
for his whole career, if you're not okay with him being your backup?
I did feel good about him as the backup. Like I didn't know why that kind of thing existed that they wanted something else because I thought he would have done a fine job.
Yeah. After Dak Prescott went down, I still said they had the best quarterback in the division.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz has not looked anything like he did in that Super Bowl season. That 2018 season
Yeah.
is starting to look more like an anomaly.
He
You
has
know,
so many balls that fall short of the receiver. I've never seen a QB have more balls consistently like come up 4 yards short of who he's targeting. I don't know what that is, but Wentz just
yeah.
cannot get the ball there like half the time it feels like.
I was gonna say, and they were discussing that about Cam Newton last week. Cam Newton looks like his shoulder is just falling off. He was bouncing
Yeah.
balls all over. But yeah, I mean, injury prone quarterback. He's the ultimate competitor, but he's been since his ACL
Yeah.
injury, since that Super Bowl run, he's been a pretty quiet and uninspired looking quarterback who it seems like the team kind of has a problem with some of his antics with stuff. Like it doesn't seem like he's a great leader. I can't vouch for that. I don't like when people discuss my quarterback not being a great leader when they have
Mhm.
no knowledge of anything going on there. But yeah, I mean, I thought Andy Dalton as of right now coming in, I was like, I'd feel more confident in him than Carson Wentz, which might be a bit of a
Hot take.
hot take, but that's where I was at. And at this point, the Cowboys are done. Losing to the Redskins by 25, you're
Yeah.
done. Like that's just that. Um, I guess I like the Eagles coming out.
Mhm.
And maybe the Washington football team can compete for a division, where a 6-win team is definitely going to win that division.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I couldn't agree more on Zeke being a little overrated at this point. He's just I've never been an Ezekiel Elliott fan. I've from the day he was drafted, when I saw him playing at Ohio State, I never liked him, mostly just as a person, and
Yeah.
I hated the way he played against my team. So, but
How
you know,
about one more player for me he's not overrated, I don't think, but just really disappointing has been Philip Rivers. I thought that this dude was gonna be like borderline all pro, have like a 28 TD, 8 interception season, and he's the same Philip Rivers, even with a really good offensive line now. And I don't know, he just doesn't target anybody who I think he's gonna target. Like his favorite person to throw to is like Mo Alley Cox, who's like a backup tight end, but that's like his favorite target this year. I just don't get what he's doing in
so
Indianapolis.
so I actually wrote down two disappointing players, and I wrote down Kirk Cousins and Philip Rivers was my other
Yeah,
one. He's just, I've always heard the hype around Philip Rivers being like one of the best quarterbacks to never win a Super Bowl, and watching him, I just don't see it. Like I don't really get what the hype surrounding him is. I don't really
yeah,
understand. I mean, I know that he puts up yards, he throws a ridiculous amount of picks. His
yeah,
throwing motion is the most weird looking throwing motion I've ever seen.
yeah.
It's
He
like
shot
Alonzo.
puts
It's
it.
like the Lonzo Ball jump shot, dude. It's like when you see it, you're like, what is this? And
Yeah,
so, they're managing games. They're managing to win games in Indy. That defense is, I think, run of the mill is it's pretty average defense. It'll help them. I think it'll lead them to the playoffs. I think Philip Rivers could potentially lead them to the playoffs, but I don't see them really doing anything beyond that. I mean,
yeah,
they're an offense built around their O line, and Philip Rivers. Yeah, everyone talked about, oh, what's he going to look like with an actual O line? He's the same guy. It's just the decision making's never been good.
I don't
He's
get
he's
it.
never he's never been a top tier quarterback. It seems like. I think he might have
Yeah,
one second team All Pro. He's been a couple time Pro Bowler. He's just never been towards the top of the league in anything. So I was excited to see him there, but he just hasn't really lived up to it, you know.
Yeah. And the more I thought about it, I was thinking to myself and saying, like, when he went 12-4 with the Chargers like 2 years ago, that was because their team was so stacked around him. Like they had great receivers, great defense, decent, Melvin Gordon and Eckler as running back. And even the year like 15 years ago when LT won MVP on the Chargers. Even that year, when that was arguably he was early on in his career, but probably his best year overall, just from success standpoint. They got to the AFC Championship game and stuff, and he played well. But even still, it seems like on the teams he's ever been good on, he's not really the reason. And you look at like if you were to put him in Russ's situation, even in his prime, like 2010, the team would finish like 6-10 every year, and he's never like elevated a team. He's just been like another good piece on when he's been on really good teams.
Absolutely. And the Chargers have always been kind of that poverty franchise in that division. They just,
Yeah.
they can't win. Like they just don't know how to win. And you can see that this year too, even.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're just a really poorly run franchise. I mean, they had a team doctor stab their QB in the
That
lung.
was so infuriating.
And it's like, I mean, it's only on the Chargers. Every year you hear about probably 8 good Chargers players who end up out for the season the first 2 or 3 days of training.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a team that can't, like, they just can't win. And I don't know. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Philip Rivers, to his credit, I think in that AFC Championship game he was playing on a torn ACL. But
Even still,
even still,
I don't think he would have been the reason.
he's not their guy. So yeah, he was one of the guys who I said throughout the start of the season, throughout the first half, has been kind of a disappointment. But who knows? Maybe he changes it around the second half. He's had 1 or 2 decent games.
Yeah.
But we'll see, I suppose.
I sure hope Tyrod Taylor recovers and gets another chance to start.
Hopefully.
He's my man.
I know he's your guy.
I freaking love Tyrod Taylor, and I just honestly like coming out of Buffalo. He his last season there, they made the playoffs and he was a Pro Bowler. Like I don't get why. I mean, he signed with the Browns and then they threw in Baker because he got injured, and then same thing with the Chargers, basically with getting injured and Herbert. But I feel like he's starter quality, and just I don't know, he just hasn't gotten really good breaks lately.
Yeah, he got the Bills over that long playoff drought, So I don't know.
Yeah.
I was a little confused when they decided to get rid of him as well. But
Yeah.
if they felt like he just wasn't the guy who could get them over the hump, I suppose. I always liked him too, but what are you gonna do?
And his TD to INT ratio, it's like pretty good. Like I think his last year it was something like 20-7, I want to say, but I don't know the exact numbers, but it was good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
You want to go into like playoff predictions or like standings predictions?
Yeah, so I have some seeding predictions for both the AFC and the NFC. So for the AFC, I have the Chiefs as the number 1 team. So I think the AFC is going to run through Kansas City. That's just a safe bet, Like Kansas City, they're going to. I mean, they have 1 loss to the Raiders right now. But I think you very well could swap Kansas City at the 1 spot with my number 2, which is Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is, again, the most complete team in the NFL right now. Number 3, I have Tennessee. Number 4, I have Buffalo winning that division. And then for my wild card teams, I have Baltimore at the 5, Indy at the 6, and Cleveland sneaks in at the 7, just due to having a weak schedule. First round, they're going to get bounced by Pittsburgh right away. And how about you? What do you got for the AFC?
AFC, I pretty much agree. Like NFC, or excuse me, in the West, I don't see any team besides the Chiefs making it. The North, I see the same 3 teams making it. In the South, I see Colts and Tennessee, and then I think the only thing would be like if Buffalo, or excuse me, if Cleveland somehow is a massive drop off, and if the Dolphins are like a 3-3 team that's actually for real somehow, maybe they get into like a 7 seed or like 8-8. I could see.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
and
pretty much agree with you.
Cleveland, I'm not sold on. I think they could squeak their way in just due to the fact of the number of wins they have at the halfway mark. Because I think they're at 4 or
Yeah.
5 wins right now.
Yeah,
So,
5-2.
yeah, so I mean, they're off to a good enough start. Another team that I think if they improve a little bit here and Cleveland starts to fall off, I think the Las Vegas Raiders are another team that
Yeah.
potentially could come out of the West. Again, pretty unlikely, but they're a team that's shown that they can compete with some quality teams. They
Yeah.
beat the Chiefs, obviously. They played New England pretty close. Just got blown out by Tampa Bay, but
Yeah.
that was a little bit misguided score wise too. So,
Yeah.
and then my NFC, I have Green Bay as the one. I think they're the best team in the NFC. Even losing
Mhm.
to Tampa Bay the way they did, that's a fluke
Yeah.
game to me. If you watch that game, they controlled that game until the pick six. After the pick six, everything kind of crumbled. They just couldn't really put it back together.
Yeah.
And that's where I got with that. The number 2 seed, I have Tampa Bay. I didn't want to buy
Mhm.
in on the Tampa Bay hype before the year. I thought they were going to be this year's Browns, slightly improved. I thought they would go 8-8,
Mhm.
or they'd go 9-7, something like that.
Yeah.
They're showing that they're among the NFC elite right now, and I don't really see many teams in their division competing with that.
Yeah.
Uh, Number 3, I have Seattle. I think Seattle falls off a little bit. That defense loses them a couple more games that just Russ can't really get them out of.
Yep.
The 4 seed, if you have to pick an NFC East team, I have the Eagles.
Yeah.
They're just the obvious favorite. It looks like them punting for that tie is actually it might be their savings grace on the year, which
Yeah.
I feel like you don't ever hear about a team wanting to tie. But
Yeah.
I mean, if it counts for a half a win, why not?
Yeah.
My 5 seed, I'm actually gonna readjust mine from what I wrote down. I'm gonna go with the LA Rams at the 5. Um,
Mhm.
they're just a team with the number of wins they have right now. They're at a point where that puts them over a couple of other teams. I think they'll compete a little over some of the other ones. Number 6, I have the Saints. I think
Mhm.
you have to include the Saints in the playoffs. I don't
Yeah.
love the Saints. I don't think the Saints really win a playoff game again this year. I don't know what is going on with Michael Thomas right now, but it
Yeah.
seems
It's
like it's been a
confusing.
mess there. And then, but I still think they make it into the hunt. And then my 7 seed, I have the Arizona Cardinals sneaking in. They were my dark horse before the year at 7. I'm going to stick with that. Originally, I wrote down the Bears without including the Saints, but then I was like, no,
Mm.
the Saints are definitely going to make it in over the Bears. But
Yeah.
yeah, so again, to go through that, I have Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Seattle, um, Philadelphia, the LA Rams, the New Orleans Saints, and the Arizona Cardinals.
Mine is generally pretty similar. I actually don't really know what I think the I agree with you. The Packers I think will be the 1 seed just based on I think they'll have some division games that they'll pick up that'll be easy, and
Mhm.
I think Chicago looks good on paper 5-2, but I think their point differential is almost like
They
they've
might be
only
in they might be in the negative for point differential.
they might be because they've won all the games they've won I think by like one possession.
Yeah.
So
You
I
know,
just yeah.
I was gonna say, and the Packers ran into the same issue last year. People wanted to call them like a fraudulent 13-3 team. All that matters are wins. So to me,
Yeah.
point differential, it doesn't matter. If they win, that's great for Chicago, I suppose. I don't really see them competing. They look at them playing the Rams. They
Yeah.
can keep up with the Rams. I think that Tampa Bay Thursday night game, bit of a fluky win at
It
home.
feels fluky.
Obviously they have to play Green Bay twice. Still, they play them both on the later half of the year. Maybe they pick up one of those. I don't really see them competing for the division this year, even though they're only 1 game back right now. That's also only because we had our bye and they don't have their bye until week 11. So we'll see, I suppose. I mean, there's potential for the Bears to squeak their way in over maybe Arizona or Los Angeles, but
Yeah.
Los Angeles seems less likely now that they lost to them. And I think Arizona ends up with a better record than the Bears.
I'll say something like um, Green Bay. I actually think the Saints could still win their division over Tampa because they did beat Tampa. I think it was like week 2. And they like impressively beat Tampa, I think, if I recall. Like they looked like definitively the better team.
Yeah, that was a week 1 matchup.
Oh, okay.
Tom Brady looked awful in that game. Outside of a few dime throws, he threw like
Yeah.
he threw a pick six. He threw another pick at one point. But yeah, I mean they have that tiebreak over Tampa Bay right now, so I mean they're hoping Tampa Bay drops some games. I think out of the NFC, Tampa Bay is one of the more complete teams. Them signing
Yeah.
Antonio Brown that's a pretty significant signing, I'd say. So I like Tampa Bay out of the
Yeah.
South as much as that pains me because I don't
Yeah.
want Tampa Bay to succeed. I just think they're one of the better teams.
I think the Saints, I do think it's impressive that they are still 4-2 and they haven't had Michael Thomas. They've had Emmanuel Sanders out for a few weeks. So I mean, if they beat Tampa again, I think it's basically the Saints division, I feel like. But I think what their second matchup will basically determine the division.
Yeah.
Um so I could see that one going either way. I do like Tampa a lot. The only weakness on them, I feel like, is the secondary, which is pretty much atrocious actually. When I look at that secondary, the personnel is like Darian Stewart is like their best safety, and that dude's like 35, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, front seven really solid. Running back core once Fournette's healthy will be solid. Wide receivers are best wide receiver core in the NFL now. Brady's looking good. Offensive line's good enough.
Mhm.
I think that the Rams could actually pull out that division too in the West. I think that division is super hard to predict because really any team could win it at this point, it feels like.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know. Just against Seattle, the games that they've won, they've barely won. So I feel like they could easily be a 2-4, or they've played 6 games. So I feel like they could easily be 2-4 right now instead of 5-1. So I'm just not sold on them yet. So okay, let's see here. I'm gonna go Green Bay, Tampa, LA Rams. I guess fill in the blank for the NFC East. We'll probably say Philly. The wild card teams, New Orleans, Seattle, and then the final one. I was thinking about the Bears, but I actually think weirdly enough the 49ers could pull it off just because I feel like they're 4-3, but they've been missing a lot of key people throughout the
Mhm.
first couple of weeks. So I could see them pulling it off.
No Arizona, huh?
Arizona, I don't know. I like them a lot, but I'm not exactly sure. Like, I don't know. I feel like,
Hey,
yeah, I don't know.
that's that's fair though. Like I said, Arizona is a dark horse team for me. They were going into the year. I like the way they're playing right now. I like their
Yeah,
offense quite a bit. DeAndre Hopkins has made them like
he's
that
been
offense is
phenomenal.
clicking. Yeah. They lost Kenyon Drake for a few weeks. I don't know if that's really that significant. Kyler Murray's their best running back, anyways. So, um,
True.
who really cares? But yeah, I don't know. I like Arizona a lot. I don't really see them doing much in the playoffs. I think they're too young. They're too raw still. But
Yeah,
they're a team that definitely will be competing for that division in the coming years, I think.
yeah. Was Seattle their first divisional game?
Yeah, I think so.
So to me, that's the only concern is that like 2 games against the 49ers, 2 games against the Rams, and another game against Seattle. Like that could easily be 5 losses. Like it's not. I mean,
Absolutely.
they played great, but you know they
Oh,
they
no,
could drop
that's
those all.
That's a lie. They beat
Oh,
San Francisco
49ers.
1.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
In that, I remember looking at the score of that game and I was like, "Oh, that's a good game."
yeah. I don't know though. I feel like what's their? I guess their signature win is Seattle, but even still, that feels like a game that they were supposed to lose.
Yeah.
And like Seattle just gave it to them with the Wilson picks.
And I know it's week 1, but beating San Francisco is I like that's coming off a Super Bowl team. They're
Mhm.
all healthy at that point too. Like they had their
Yeah,
defense healthy and stuff. I think that's a pretty big win.
yeah, that's true. That's
But
probably their signature win. Then I would say.
yeah,
Um,
I don't know. They're
that division's just hard to predict for me.
yeah.
Everybody's good.
Well, and the thing is too is I mean they very well could have 4 teams come out of that division. Like with the playoff
Yeah,
structure now, they could have all 4 teams come out of that division. And
that's
if
true.
if if you told me that happened, I wouldn't be surprised, you know? They're
Yeah,
solidifying themselves as the best division in football. All the teams in there are competitors. All of them are teams that scare me in some ways as a Packer
yeah.
fan, and, but
It's just why they should have one of those teams basically represent the NFC East. Have no teams from the
so
NFC East make it, and just have Seattle and the Rams or the Cardinals be the two division winners. And but that's not how it's gonna
I'd
go.
be a big fan of that. I hope
Yeah,
they readjust their playoff structure because, yeah, having an NFC East team in this year, it feels like a sham. It's like, okay, a
yeah,
wild card team's getting an easy win out of this
yeah,
year. You know, for me, the LA Rams going to Philadelphia, like I
yeah,
don't see Philadelphia. Maybe they get an upset. You know, everyone talks about the Beastquake game when the seven and
yeah.
nine,
Marshawn.
yeah, the 7-9 Seahawks
Yep.
beat New
New
Orleans
Orleans. Yeah.
down in New Orleans. But I don't know. I just this year I don't see any team competing in the NFC East. So it just feels like kind of a wasted playoff spot when there could be a team in there that's actually competitive that makes it exciting.
And if Philly was going to do something like the Beastquake game, it would have to be like terrible weather, so it kind of neutralizes whatever offense they're facing, and then there would have to be some super fluky play that they like get a punt or like a punt return where like somebody on the defending team like falls down randomly, so then they
Yeah.
get or like you know what I mean? Like it just
Yeah.
feels like they'd have to have a ton of things go their way, and then like probably some super huge fluky play that goes their way too.
Yeah. Exactly. But
That pretty much covers what I had as far as the playoff or like standing and playoff topics. Did you have any that
um
you wanted to bring up?
not for standings. I guess so the one question I have for you is who's your midseason MVP?
Um, I think just because 5-1 looks really good and is tied for the best in the NFC, I got to go Russ because I think he, I think it's pretty much down to him and Rodgers, and then I guess. People want to throw in Brady to that, but I don't throw him into it just because he's had like as many bad games as he has good so far. Like,
Yeah.
yes, 45-20 looks great, but he also looked bad against the Saints and looked bad against Chicago. So
Mhm.
I think he's out of it. So I think it's I'm gonna say number one Russ, number two Rodgers, number three TJ Watt.
Okay. I like that.
I want
Um
a defensive player to at some point win MVP. It should have been Aaron Donald like the past couple of years, maybe, but
I said JJ Watt should have won. What was that, like 3 or 4 years ago? JJ Watt had like his
yeah,
second 20 sack season or something like that. I was like, there's no reason anyone but JJ Watt should win this. But
yeah.
I have a pretty similar makeup to you.
Mhm,
I'm just for argument's sake, I'm going to put Aaron Rodgers number one over
mhm.
Russ. Um, Aaron Rodgers is playing on a team where obviously he doesn't have to do it all like Russ does, which that's kind of the idea behind most valuable. But a lot of Russ's stats are inflated because his defense gives up so many points.
Yeah, so he has a lot more
Roger,
time of possession.
yeah. To his credit, Rodgers did have that bad game in Tampa Bay. 175 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. But
Besides
Russ
that, he's
also,
been perfect.
yeah. Besides that, he's been all but perfect this year. Russ has, I want to say, 22 touchdowns to 5 picks now, 3 pick
Mhm.
game against Arizona. One of those pretty much solidifying a loss. Like that's to me just as significant as him doing that. And then those first couple of weeks, I mean, he had 16 touchdowns through 14 games or 4 games or something like that. So
Yeah,
just for argument's sake, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers over Russell Wilson, but it's pretty much to me neck and neck. People want to
yeah.
make it seem like Russ is running away from it. With it, I don't see it that way. I think it's much closer than people want to admit. I think the one good thing that's going to come out of it is Russ is finally going to get an MVP vote,
Mhm.
which he has definitely deserved in past years. And
Yeah,
then number three, I like you with like TJ Watt. You could go Aaron Donald. You could go
yeah,
probably Miles Garrett at this point too. Miles
yeah.
Garrett's pretty solid. Um, any of those home wrecking defensive players, I'd love to see a defensive player win it. Um,
Not since 1986.
yeah,
Lawrence Taylor, last one.
yeah, but
I do not. I do not like that the NFL MVP is basically best quarterback award. It seems like it's turned into, which just
with
gets
a
old to me.
with a couple sprinkled in running backs.
Yeah, with like I think 2012 it was Peterson, 2006 it was Tomlinson. I don't even remember the last one that wasn't a quarterback before that, but
Yeah, who
um,
knows? It's a quarterback. It's a quarterback league. So what are you gonna do?
yeah,
But, all right.
yeah. Definitely Watt should have won it that one year, and Aaron Donald. Who won it like 2 years ago? Because I think that was the year Aaron Donald. A bunch of people were calling for him to win it. Like
So
the year
last
that
year
they
was.
went like 13-3.
I was gonna say last year was Lamar. 2 years ago was Pat
Oh,
Mahomes.
Mahomes. Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
50 touchdown season's hard to
yeah.
pass up. But
Who was the year before that? Now I'm trying to think.
I think
2017.
Tom Brady won it.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
that should have been Aaron Donald.
yeah. Tom Brady. Yeah, I don't know. Uninteresting seeing Tom Brady win it. That's for sure. But
So maybe one last topic to wrap us up. I'm gonna kind of do a rapid fire. Like I'm gonna list like a playoff contender, and then you tell me their biggest weakness right now.
okay,
All right. So first, Kansas City.
Kansas City. Their O line. I would say like if you look at the way to beat Kansas City, and it's getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes. That's the reason the Raiders beat them. The issue is like when you blitz like Baltimore did, he tears you up. But I'd say yeah, their O line and then their run game is just inconsistent at this point. So that's where I would go
Gotcha.
with that one. Their
Uh,
defense is legit though.
yeah, it is. It is pretty good this year.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, the middle linebacker position, just with the Devin Bush injury. It's hard to pick anything with that team, though. I mean, I guess you could argue their run game. James Conner is just kind of like your run of the mill running
Yeah,
back, but like, yeah, Devin Bush being out, I think that'll hurt the middle of the field for them. But overall, not a whole lot of issues on that team.
Baltimore.
Inconsistency of the pass game.
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson just hasn't looked like he did last year. Um, he's been quietly good, but the offense just hasn't looked like it was last year. Just as a dynamic, seems like teams have kind of figured them out a little bit, which is what I was expecting because it's hard to repeat
yeah,
consistent offensive performance in that style. So I would go their pass game. They need more vertical threats on the receiving core. They just
yeah.
picked up Des Bryant, obviously an aged Des Bryant who hasn't played in 2 years. But really their only good wide receiver is Hollywood Brown, it feels like. So
Yeah, they have to play from the lead basically to win a
yeah.
game.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's where it hurt them playing Tennessee last year. They couldn't play their style of offense and they lost.
yeah.
So when
How about
Lamar has to be your drop back passer, you're not going to win, and
yeah,
that's
that's true.
the way it is.
Speaking of Tennessee, how about Tennessee?
Tennessee, their defense, just in general, their defense, they can't generate much of a pass rush, even with Jadeveon Clowney and Vic Beasley. Um, Corners aren't amazing. They're in the middle of the field's not great. If they're losing games, it's because of the defense. Realistically, if the offense doesn't play perfect, I'm not seeing them winning many games.
Indianapolis.
Philip Rivers. Like,
Yeah, enough said.
it really boils down to just if Philip Rivers has a bad game, they're not winning. So,
Yeah,
and that's been the reason they've lost a couple times that they have this year. Their defense, like I said, their defense can keep them competitive. Philip Rivers is going to be the reason they lose.
Buffalo.
Um, no run game whatsoever. They're completely one-dimensional. Devin
Yeah,
Singletary is their best running back, and that's just not a
yeah,
winning formula. I'd say their defense. I like their defense quite a bit, but yeah, their run game is just very lackluster. They don't really get much explosiveness out of it, so it's a pretty one-dimensional offense.
yeah. It feels like they're trying to do what Atlanta did like 4 years ago with Freeman and Coleman,
Mm-hmm.
but Singletary and Yeldon are not nearly what those two dudes were.
No, yeah, and I mean, I like their receiving core a lot. Stephon Diggs has been a huge pickup for them.
Yeah,
Developing Josh Allen is they've gotten much better with Stephon Diggs there. But teams are going to figure that out, and if they close down one or two of their receivers, like Josh Allen, crumbles. He goes back to a lot of those bad tendencies he had in his
Yeah.
couple of seasons. So
NFC, how about we'll start with the Saints.
Saints, Drew Brees, really, as bad as that sounds, like I don't love, like, after watching the Packers Saints game, I realized
Mhm.
I hate watching the Saints. Their offense is really boring. It's,
Yeah.
I now understand what people are saying when they say that all of Michael Thomas's yards are off slants, because all of his yards in that Packer game were dump offs to Alvin Kamara in the middle. And it's
Yeah.
like, get yards where you can, but like, Drew Brees can't throw the ball 20 yards downfield.
They're very dink and dunk.
Yeah, it's them meticulously kind of gashing you down the middle, and if that'll win you regular season games, when you get to the playoffs, when the intensity's up, it's just not gonna. Like they're gonna play a team like the Rams or Tampa Bay, Green Bay, stuff like that, who are just gonna win because they stop it. You get a
Yeah.
couple of stops, and if your defense can't stop anyone, then it's just not going to win for you. So I don't love the Saints offense. I think Drew Brees is just old. It's his last year in the league. He's going to retire after this year. They
Yeah.
want to put all their resources into it, and it's not really paying off for them very
Hey,
much right now.
they've got Jameis Winston waiting in the wings, though. They're going to start bombing it after this year.
Yeah, they got LASIK Jameis with those clear eyes.
Oh, yeah. How about Tampa?
Tampa Bay. If Tom Brady has a bad game, I think that all but ends it for him.
Yeah.
I feel like Tom Brady right now, granted it's a new system, it's a new team, his second team in 20 years, you know, if he just I feel like if he gets a little behind, if he struggles a little bit, the team kind of crumbles. Um, Also pretty one-dimensional in the offensive style. They're pretty pass heavy. Ronald
Mhm.
Jones and Leonard Fournette's been hurt, and I don't know. I see them as a pass friendly team, but
Yeah.
their defense is going to be what wins them. If they win a championship this year, I think it's because of the defense. So
I think for them, the only thing about the defense is that secondary. Like in a shootout with, let's say if they played Seattle, I think it's like a coin flip if it becomes a shootout, because I think Russ and those receivers versus that secondary, they're winning that. And I mean, Brady and his receivers are definitely beating up on the Seattle secondary, but
yeah,
I think that's the one thing is if they get into like really high scoring, fast moving, pass heavy blowouts, I don't know that the Tampa secondary can keep up, but
yeah,
we'd have to
and
see that
that's
situation
fair.
happen.
Yeah, I agree.
How about Green Bay?
Green Bay is pretty one-dimensional in their receiving core. It's pretty much Devonte Adams and then some scrubs.
Hmm.
I like
You're not a
the
big Lazard fan?
I mean, I like Lazard a lot, but I mean,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
if you look at their receiving core, Devonte Adams is a second round pick. He's a premier wide receiver in the NFL. He's probably a top 5 receiver in the NFL. And then you have a huge drop off to probably a tier 3 wide receiver in Alan Lazard, who's an undrafted free agent they got from Jacksonville. You have Marquez Valdez Scantling, who is supposed to be your vertical threat, and it just seems like in the 3 years he's been in Green Bay, him and Rodgers just haven't connected in that.
Yeah,
Anytime you see him throwing the ball to
Scantling.
MVS, yeah, it feels like he's just trying to draw PI, because
Yeah,
Marquez is fast. Like, I'll give him credit, Marquez is very fast, but he's not the guy that they needed him to be, and it shows when it comes down to games where Devontae hasn't played. He's still a non-factor. They find other players to put in, and they get them the ball. So he's not what we all hoped he would be, I think, and that's why they've looked into trading for Will Fuller. I think very similar style of player, but much better.
yeah,
And then the defense is hit or miss. Middle linebacker position is very hit or miss. It's looking like they might have drafted and obtained an undrafted free agent who could be studs of the future, but just overall, that's been their issue on
hmm.
defense forever. So
How about the Rams?
I don't know. The Rams are
I think
weird.
the running game is, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
trust
it
Daryl
you know,
Henderson or Malcolm Brown.
yeah, they're the running game and Jared Goff. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
Jared Goff he's a game managing QB, but I mean, look at him in the Super Bowl. They put up 3 points.
yeah,
They're one of the top offenses in the NFL that year, and they put up 3 points in the Super Bowl. So, what are you
yeah.
gonna do?
He
So
feels a lot like Alex Smith, but just not at like the 30. Alex Smith kind of peaked at like 32. He's just like what you would get if you were playing the 24-year-old Alex Smith.
right, right. But yeah, I don't know. I like the Rams defense quite a bit. I don't I don't love their offense. I think it'll be good enough to get them to the playoffs and potentially win one game. Because in my prediction, they'd be playing the Eagles.
Yeah,
So, that I think they're enough to do that. I don't really see them being competitors this year though.
yeah. And then I'm not going to talk about anybody from the NFC East, but maybe um, whoever you think is the next biggest threat in the West. Just talk about what you think their weaknesses, whether it be Arizona or Seattle.
So I'll go with Seattle. And it's glaringly obvious it's their defense. Their defense is
Yeah,
bottom three in the league. They give up, they're probably giving up over 30 points a game. If and like you said, if you look at all their games are one score, like one possession
yeah,
games. When it comes to the playoffs, that's a flip of the coin, and a lot of the times it feels like it doesn't go your way. So that's not really a winning formula for me. You don't want, when you get to the playoffs, you don't want it to be, well, it's a coin flip on who's going to show up today.
yeah,
You want the more sure thing. So I don't see Seattle being in the Super Bowl this year. I think they make it either through the divisional round into the NFC Championship, or they get just stopped at the divisional round.
yeah.
Um, but I I feel like their defense is the reason they're not going to be in the Super Bowl this year.
And then I debated bringing up the Bears too, but I think the Bears is just so obvious it's QB that there's not even that much to discuss.
It's hardly even just the QB; it's just the offense in general.
Yeah,
I'd say almost their biggest issue is Matt Nagy. Like he's not a great play caller.
yeah,
Their offense is very bland. And to be fair, Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, they're not the QBs you want to build around. But um, they just in the 3 or 4 years he's been there, they've been to the playoffs once, and that's always with a top tier defense.
yeah,
Last year you could argue that the defense just kind of gave up, which who can blame them? Like, their offense was so abysmal that it's like, well, why even bother? Why am I going to go out there and
yeah,
try my hardest? So, the Bears have potential this year to be in the playoffs. They have the potential to maybe win a playoff game. But
if they trade for Matt Ryan, I think that is like a match made in heaven. But
yeah,
also, they probably need like another weapon really to make that offense dangerous still.
yeah, because Allen Robinson has really emerged. I
Yeah.
was hoping when he was a free agent, I was hoping he would sign in Green Bay. I was really
Hmm.
excited for the prospect of him being in Green Bay. I thought he didn't get the love he deserved down in Jacksonville. And
Yeah.
when he decided to go to Chicago, I was like, that's an interesting choice, I suppose. And people want to talk about the QB play that Allen Robinson has had, being Blake Bortles, Mitchell Trubisky, and now Nick Foles. And it's like, well, he chose that. He could have went from Blake Bortles to Aaron Rodgers, but he decided Mitchell Trubisky was his guy. So,
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't feel too sorry for him in that aspect. I am always going to be an Allen Robinson fan. I always enjoyed
Yeah.
watching him play. I think he's great, but their quarterback and their offensive play calling is their downfall, I think.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think that pretty much covers the teams that I had down, and I think that unless you have any other topics, that kind of wraps our episode. I think.
yeah, no, I'm good at ending it there.
Great. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Remember, today's sponsor is Robertson Electricians. If you need light, call Robertsons. All right. And with that, Eli Hyde, thank you for coming on the podcast, or I guess it's a simulcast now because we're on video today.
Mhm.
And hopefully you can come on for some future episodes too.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Sweet. All right. See y'all later, folks.